Today we're going to go into word letter codes, one of the most annoying question types in verbal reasoning. These questions are about using codes to represent words. You are given the first word and its code, and either the second word or code. Using this information, you must work out the missing code or word. Use the alphabet to help you. Okay, so here's a little example. If the code for wash is ZDVK, what is the code for deer? So here we've been given the word and the code for that word, and then we've been given the word and we've got to find the code. Your first step is to check whether the second code or second word is missing. In this case, the second code is missing, so we are working from word to code. So W to Z. So as you can see, from W to Z, we've got to move forward in the alphabet 3 letters. Now, what we need to do to find this code is, because we know that the first letter is a D, we need to apply that same shift. So from D, if we count forward 3, we get to G. So G is our first letter. And then we've got to do it for the remaining letters. So let's have a look. A to D. So A to D, again, is a 3-letter shift. Here we've got to go from E and then move forward 3 letters as well. So from E, 3 letters forward is H. So our next letter will be H. And you can see it's here. And then S to V is also a 3-letter shift. And then in the word deer, if we move forward 3 letters, it's D. So that's why D is there. And then from H to K is also 3 letters forward. So R and 3 letters forward from R will be U. So you get the code GHDU. Sometimes the codes won't be the same, and I mean generally you can expect them to vary in terms of the shifts. So the shift pattern could be different. Let's go into some examples. We're going to start with these shifts, going from a word to a code. So that's very similar to what we just did. If the code for catch is ZBRED, what is the code for jokes? Now, what I want you to imagine is that the alphabet sort of goes around in a continuum. So it goes from A to Z, Z back to A, and so on. So it kind of goes around in a circle. So if we look at our first letter is C, and it maps to Z. If we look here, we're actually going back 3, because we go from C to B to A to Z. Yeah. So here we're going back 3, and it's a good idea to write down each of the shifts so you remember. From A to B, that's quite a simple shift because it's only going forward 1. So that's going to be a +1 shift. And then from T to R, we're going back 2. So I'm going to say that's -2. From C to E, we're essentially going forward 2. So we're going to be +2. And then from H to D, we're going back 4. So that'll be -4. And then here I'm going to apply the same shifts to jokes. So from J, if we move back 3 from J, we get to G. For O, if we go forward 1 from O, then we get to P. If we go from K, that will be back 2. So K back 2 will be I. For E, we're going forward 2. So forward 2 from E will be G. And then from D, back 4, we're going to go back 4 from S, which is O. All right, so we get G, P, I, G, O. Now, this sort of takes up the difficulty a bit. When you go from a code to a word, you've kind of got to reverse each of the shifts. So once we establish what the pattern is and what shifts we're doing from melon to P, F, J, S, M, we've got to reverse any of the shifts that we do to go from the code to the word. So what we need to do is we're going to start exactly the same way. We're going to write each of our shifts. So from M to P, that's moving forward 3. So that will be +3. From E to F, that's +1. L to J, that's -2. From O to S, we're going forward 3. And then from N to M, we're going back 1. So that'll be -1. So what we need to do for this code is essentially where you've got a +3, that will be now -3. If you've got a -2, that will be a +2. So P back 3 would be M. Okay. Then we've got to go back 1 from P. So back 1 from P is O. Because we're going back 2 to get to J, from S we've got to move forward 2. So S forward 2 will be U. And then because we're going forward 3 to get to S from O to S, we've got to move back 3 from V. So back 3 from V is S. And then because we're moving back to get from N to M, we're moving back 1. We've got to move forward 1 from D. So forward 1 from D is E. So our word will be mouse. Those are the first types of code. There's another type of code which you can sometimes see, and they're sort of reflective, essentially. So what I mean by that is, you know that there's 26 letters in the alphabet, so the halfway point is 13 and the 14th. If we were to draw a line down the centre, so say a line of symmetry, I know it's not symmetrical, but A would correspond to Z, M would correspond to N, L would correspond to O, K would correspond to P, and so on. They're actually quite easy to do, but then you've got to be able to spot them. So as long as you can spot them, they're not that difficult. And in fact, I find them a bit easier than shifting. So let's have a look at this example here. S to H. So if you look here, I've got to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 from my central point to get to S. So if I go 6 on the other side, so 6 on the other side, I get to H. So you can see how S corresponds to H. I'm just going to label all my, sort of have numbers underneath just to make it a bit easier. So T is here. It's 7 away from our midpoint. And if we go 7 on the other side, that will be G. So by this point, you should start to pick up that the code is going to be reflective. Maybe do 3 just to be super sure. If we look, our third letter in stand is A, and that corresponds to Z. And as we know, A corresponds to Z. So the 13th position is A, and the 13th position on the other side is Z. Okay, so table is we've got to find the code for table. So again, we're doing word to a code. So usually the easier one. But in the case of reflective codes is quite similar, doing both ways, and you don't need to remember to reverse the shifts. So actually, I think they're generally easier. We can see it's in the 7th position. So if we look at our corresponding 7th position over here, we get G. Then if we look A we know corresponds to Z. B we know corresponds to Y because they're both in the 12th position. L we know corresponds to, let's have a look. L is in the second position over here, so it will be O. And then E corresponds to V. So it'll be G, Z, Y, O, V. We're just going to do one more where we go from a code to a word and it's also reflective. So again, we're going to do the same thing. First of all, as you know, the first step is to find out whether the code is reflective. So we'll just see if it fits into that trend. So if we look for P, P is 3 away from our center position. And then on our other side, it corresponds to K. So that seems to correspond. Our next letter is E. So E is our 9th position, and that corresponds to the V over here. So, and the next letter is A. We know that corresponds to Z. So 13th position and 13th position. For this one, we need to find the word for S, L, F, H, V. So the word for the code. So in this case, we've got our S in our 6th position. So if we look over to the other side, we've got H. L is in the 2nd position, and that corresponds to our O. F is in our 8th position, and that corresponds to a U. H is in the 6th position, and that corresponds to the S. And then V is in the 9th position, which corresponds to the E, and we get house. That's how you work through word letter codes. Thanks for watching this verbal reasoning walkthrough. To get yourself a copy of our reasoning books, visit the link in the description.